The Exploding Cart, Schicciata Florentina, and food festivals under ugly neon lights. This week, it's all about Easter in Italy.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is the place for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this week, it's Easter traditions in Florence and the rest of Italy with Toni Mazzaglia. But first, take a moment, pause the podcast, and rate and review the show on your podcast app. Only takes a moment, and it helps the show big time. Plus, it makes it easier for other foodie travelers like yourself to find the show. And if you're planning a trip to Portugal, I've got the perfect accessory that won't take up any space in your carry-on. My Portugal Foodie Travel Guide ebook has all the best things to eat and drink in 17 amazing Portuguese cities and towns, and it's just $9.99 to get all the best places to try a tabias in Braga or a pastel de nata in Lisbon, a pineapple caipirinha in the Azores, and much, much more. All the best local dishes, where to get them, and what you have to drink with them. Download your copy at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink, and thank you very, very much. Toni Mazzaglia is a writer and foodie tour guide at Taste Florence. You can book your foodie adventure at tasteflorence.com. Toni's an expert on the food of Florence, and she's been on the show talking about her favorite spots in the city. This time, Toni's here to talk about Easter celebrations and food in Florence and the rest of Italy. She tells me about an unusual celebration at the Duomo in Florence and tons of Easter desserts. What would Easter be without a bunch of sweet things to sample? Plus fresh peas and artichokes and, of course, Easter lamb. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Toni Mazzaglia from Taste Florence. Welcome back to Destination Eat Drink. It's been too long.
Way too long. Same here, Brent. I'm glad to be back.
I wanted to talk to you about Easter celebrations in Florence because, I want to know about the traditions and especially the foods and the drinks, but all that stuff that goes along with it. Tell me about the Easter celebration. If we're in Florence, what's it going to be like? What can we expect? And most importantly, what am I going to eat?
Okay, so the thing about Easter, there's so many things. But first of all, we can't talk about Easter. Yeah, we can't talk about Easter without mentioning Carnevale and Lent because it's all tied together. Up until Fat Tuesday, Martedì Grasso, which I believe is also called Shrove Tuesday.
Yeah, I've started hearing that. I've started hearing that recently too. Yeah.
Right? Never heard it before. I don't know if it's a new thing. Probably not. But so Shrove Tuesday, Fat Tuesday, Martedì Grasso. That's kind of the last hurrah. That's the day that everybody gets together and parties. Really up until that they're partying anyway, but that's the last because then you're going to start going into Lent where you give something up, right? You might fast, you might give up alcohol, or you might give up fried food or whatever it is you choose to give up. So Fat Tuesday is that last chance to just pack it in before you sacrifice your favorite thing and put it aside until Easter, right? So we have these beautiful traditional foods all over Italy for Carnival and pre-Carnival. And I'm just going to mention just a few. There's so many. But one that I love in Florence, and you'll find it throughout Tuscany, and you'll find different versions of it throughout Italy. In Florence, we call them frittelle di riso. It just means little rice fritters, okay? And each baker, also anyone at home that makes them, they never come out exactly the same, okay? Because it's fried. So it's kind of like when you try to make your own donuts at home. It's never quite the same as when you get them in a donut shop. So even when you go from one bakery or pastry shop to another, they're going to vary. And my favorite frittelle di riso, surprise, are at the bakery that I go to on my tour. And theirs are just the right amount of sweet, just the right amount of citrus zest, just the right amount of sugar on the outside. So it's basically a little ball of cooked rice that's held together with an egg custard. And it has usually it'll have some lemon and orange zest. It'll have maybe some orange blossom essence added into it. You'll find that a lot in Italian desserts. And then it's just fried. And then after it's been fried, it's rolled around in sugar.
Okay.
It's really good.
So it's a sweet, it's a dessert rather than a savory like an arancini.
Yeah. Exactly. This is a dessert. Actually, all the Lent food I'm going to mention, I'm sorry, not Lent. All the carnival items are sweets. And then for Easter, I'm going to give you savory and sweet. Then there's another thing that we have. It's all about the fried food up for carnival and dating up to carnival. So also cenci. Cenci is the Florentine and some other parts of Tuscany, but mostly Florence, way of saying the fried dough. Okay, that's their name for it. But cenci translates to rags. So you think of like a rag that you wipe your counter with, or even with your floor, right? They're not cut into the same shape. They're just kind of haphazardly cut into squares, but sometimes it'll be a rectangle. They do come out looking like rags because they have that little jagged edge from the little roller. And so in Florence, we call them cenci, little rags. But in other parts of Italy, in southern Italy especially, you're going to hear, well, there's tons of names for fried dough, but my favorite in southern Italy is chiacchiere. Chiacchiere. So chiacchiere is chatting or chats, okay? Or even, I don't want to say gossip, but sometimes it could be used for gossip. So chiacchiere is the word for fried dough in other parts of Italy, especially in the south. And rumor has it that they're called chiacchiere because of that crunchy noise they make. It almost sounds like people chattering in the background, you know. So those are just a couple of examples of things that I love to eat during carnival time.
So, quick question about the chiacchiere. I'm butchering the name.
Chiacchiere.
Chiacchiere. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Are they crisp and crunchy all the way through, or do you bite into them and there's crispy on the outside and doughy on the inside? What are we getting exactly? Good
question. They tend to be flat. So they don't rise enough to be, like soft inside like a donut. Mm-hmm. They're more, it's almost like a savory, I don't want to say savory cracker.
Okay.
But it almost has do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like a cracker that's like slightly puffy, and then they'll of course
we had
sprinkle it with powdered dough, powdered sugar.
We had something in Rhode Island very similar. It was called a wandy, and because they were long like a wand, but but they were fried and they were crispy, and then you put sugar on top as soon as they come out of the fryer, and you get them hot out of the fryer. They're super tasty. I mean, dough, sugar, and fat. It's going to activate pretty much everything on your tongue, right?
Everything that makes everything delicious. Oh, and in parts of Italy, I believe it's in Naples, if I'm not mistaken, they'll actually drizzle it with chocolate on top.
Oh, all right.
I know. I haven't gotten to try that yet. I just discovered, I'm a contributor I'm a contributing writer for Appetito online magazine. And so sometimes they'll post articles by other writers. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I read that. I didn't know about that person. This woman started a company called Body by Rigatoni. And I love that name.
That's so funny.
And it's just like really fun merchandise, basically being proud of being Italian and Italian food, right? And so I started following her, and I discovered that they put the chocolate on because she had a video of it.
Oh,
I had never seen it, but I had never been down there during that time of year,
Right.
Okay, so Easter.
All right. So now we've gone through Fat Tuesday. Now we've gone through the suffering of Lent for 40 days of not having all this good food. And now Easter comes. It's time to break, and we get a big feast. What happens?
Yes. So seasonal things that we'll have, you'll often see on the table fava beans and young, like fresh pecorino. So creamy pecorino, the kind that I've never located a piece of this in the States. I think because it's just, they probably don't let it in because it's so yummy. So it's called, the one that I love is marzolino, and that's made with the, traditionally in March and April, it's made with the milk of the sheep that is rumored to be the tastiest at that time of year because the grass is green and fresh, right? So it's just super creamy pecorino cheese, so sheep's cheese. And the fava beans, you don't cook them or anything. You just take them right out of their little shell and just pop them in your mouth with a piece of pecorino. And they're delightful together.
Wow.
And if you want to zhuzh it up a little bit, you could put some, you can make a salad and put like little pieces of fresh orange in there. Or you could combine it with just olive oil and a little tiny bit of vinegar. But generally speaking, it's just a snack you eat. And you could have it maybe as an antipasto or even at the end of a meal. So that's one seasonal thing I like to mention. Didn't want to forget it, brought it up first. Then, of course, the most traditional of contorni or side dishes to have for Easter is spring peas. And they're going to usually be served throughout the country with lamb, for those who eat the lamb, which is almost all over the country. You'll find lamb on the table for Easter. But like in Calabria, instead of spring peas, sometimes they'll have potatoes or artichokes.
Oh, okay.
So that's the other thing is we got Florence, but then we got there's so many things to eat and not enough time. Then there's one of my favorite things that's surprisingly good because they never really look that great, but they're always delicious. A torta salata, so like a savory pie. And the really traditional one, when it was, when people were really paying attention, had to have 33 layers of the pastry dough, right? Like that flaky crust.
Yep.
Obviously for obvious reasons, right? And there's lots of different recipes, but the one from Liguria had chard and carciofi and cheese, and then of course egg to bind it together. And you can use different herbs. I believe the original recipe had marjoram in it. You don't find that often anymore in Italy, but so it's just this, it's so good. And that came from Genova. And then throughout Italy, you're going to find different versions of that. They'll call it the torta salata, and often at Easter, they'll refer to it as the torta pasqualina, or the torta pasqualina. And then we've got, in Naples, the things they do in Naples. So in Naples, they have a casatiello, and you'll see something similar to it in that movie Big Night.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie, but it's basically best. It's so good.
It's the greatest
great
food movie ever.
Yes. And I haven't seen that since I was in my early 20s when I worked at a video store.
Oh,
and
wow.
the pay was horrible, but I got to watch good movies. So I need to see it again because I'm sure I would love it even more now. I hadn't even lived in Italy yet and I already loved it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful, and that's Tucci, isn't it?
Yeah. And he wrote it. He wrote it too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And I love I don't want to say a comeback. It's not that he was ever gone, but he's just having a moment right now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, like a big one.
Like he came back with like the pandemic. It was
CNN, right?
Him making Negronis on social media. People are like, "Oh, he's so cool, Stanley Tucci," and then such a great cast in that movie too. You got Minnie Driver and you got Rossellini in there, and oh man, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I think I'm going to put that on my must-do for the next week.
So this dish is similar to the dish that they're making, the timpani, the big pie thing that they're making.
It looks like it, but it's not really the same thing.
Okay. Fair enough.
It has ogni ben di Dio, so all of God's good things in it, right? So pancetta, salami, hard-boiled egg, provolone, like the sweet provolone, or you could even do a sharper provolone if you wanted to. And of course, it's got some meat to it in the sense that it's very filling, right? I mean, and the tradition is to have that the night before Easter, Sabato Santo. The food in Naples it's let's just put it this way. It's always delicious, but no one's ever saying how light their fare is.
So
they
true.
they always find a way to make it like next level filling, you know? Oh, it's so good. And then you've got things like down in Puglia, you've got more of the artichokes again. And then in Sardinia, it's kind of like tagliolini. I don't know how to pronounce it. I believe it's pilu. I don't think they pronounce the S. It's spelled pilus. And they serve them in a broth of sheep's broth. Have you ever had sheep's broth?
No.
Oh, you haven't lived until you've had sheep broth.
Okay.
I didn't know until I had it. It's they actually had a sagra, one of those food festivals, sheep everything, right? So we had salumi made out of sheep, and then we had pasta served in sheep broth, and we had pasta with some kind of ragu made with sheep meat, and then we had grilled sheep. You know, it was just like everything was sheep, and more sheep, and it was so good. And it's of course in these little food festivals that are in some ugly gymnasium or something with neon lights, and that's how good the food is. You don't even care that you're eating under neon lights. It's
Right.
incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I still remember that bowl of broth right there.
Wow.
So there's all kinds of things. Definitely that I would say the number one thing you're going to find on a Florentine table is going to be lamb with spring peas. And in the peas, there's going to be a little bit of pancetta.
Okay.
So a little bit of pork to give it flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the opposite of kosher. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no doubt.
How can we make this meal richer? Let's have some lamb with peas, but let's put some pork in there. But you know what? It works. It's really good. And then up north, they've got like braised beef, you know, in the Piemonte area, it's braised in Barolo. I mean, every region's different. That's what's beautiful about Italy. And then desserts. All right.
Here we go.
Okay. Florence has what we call the schiacciata fiorentina. And schiacciata, for those who have spent enough time in Tuscany, especially Florence, they know that schiacciata is a flatbread that basically looks and acts a lot like focaccia. Okay. So why are they calling a cake schiacciata? Because it's a flat cake. It's almost like a sheet cake, but it has a little bit, I want to say it has a little bit of corn flour or something in the batter, because it comes out a little bit different than a regular sheet cake. I don't want to say I guess I would say it's fluffier. And so it's like a sheet cake, and then it'll be sliced down the middle into 2 layers, and then they'll fill it with fresh, either crema chantilly or just fresh whipped cream. And then they'll dust it with powdered sugar and sometimes also some cocoa powder.
Okay.
And it's such a big deal that they hold a contest every year. And the winner of the contest was just announced for the 2nd year in a row, Caffè Gilli, which is right in the center of Florence. It's actually across the piazza from the Giube Rosse. Caffè Gilli is a historic pastry shop, and they have won the best schiacciata fiorentina for the 2nd year in a row. And it was, I believe, about 30 or 35 different pastry shops and bakers were competing.
So it must all be about the filling, because the sheet cake, I mean, the cake itself is...
one would think.
Okay.
Because, you know, they could be dry. It could be too moist. It could be too sweet. It could be not sweet enough. Okay. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's one of those things that seem really simple until you try to make it yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Leave it to the experts. Don't try this at home, kids.
No, and a different one that I just discovered maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 at the most. And that's why I always like to say, no matter how long you live in Italy, you're never going to be able to see everything or eat everything. And just when you think you have, you find out there's something else that you didn't even know about. And this is a perfect example. It's the same thing, schiacciata again, but this is schiacciata di Pasqua Livornese, or sometimes they just call it pane di Pasqua Livornese. So in either way, they're calling it flatbread or bread, but it's not. It's actually more like a cake. In this case, I'm going to say it is kind of bready, but it's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. It has a little tiny bit of either orange juice or orange zest, but you barely even pick up on the orange. And then it has anise seeds and liqueur. And so when you slice into it, you can see those seeds, you can smell it.
Of
and
course.
they'll do, an egg rub on the top of it. So when you look at it, it doesn't look very exciting. And at first you're like, okay, you take a first bite, you're like, I kind of like this. And then you can't stop eating it. And you can eat it by itself. You can eat it toasted with some butter. I'm not going to tell you not to do that because it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And then you can also have it with cheese and salami because it's so borderline between sweet and savory that you can actually eat it with cheese and different types of salumi, different types of cold cuts.
Nice. Sounds fabulous.
And I discovered it because the guy that works in the pastry shop in Florence that I go to, for some reason, he makes it. And I saw it on the shelf. And I was like, what's that? Never seen that before. And he said, oh, I can't believe you've never tried this. And then after I bought it, I went back and bought 2 and froze them because it's a very limited time.
Right.
And my freezer in Italy is tiny,
My God. It's all your freezer's completely taken up by these.
But yes, exactly. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure. Is your freezer in Portugal pretty small?
Yeah. Ours is actually relatively big by Portuguese standards, but it's by American standards, it's small. It's really
Right.
small. So
Yeah. So you have to prioritize. You're
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's how good this stuff is. I was throwing away ice that
Yeah.
you can't get anywhere.
yeah, I mean, there's going to be room for limoncello. That's a given, but
Yes.
some of this other, we're going to have to eat the ice cream because the cake is coming in.
And then there's one more.
Okay, good.
One more really important. If I don't mention it, actually, no, there's 2 more. Okay. Before I forget, which I don't know how I could fry it, the colomba di Pasqua. It's also from Lombardia, like panettone. And it is similar. I don't want to say it's like panettone. I think it's better than panettone. It doesn't have it doesn't have raisins in it for starters. So for the people out there that don't like a raisin, don't panic. There are no raisins involved.
Okay.
There is candied orange peel. And then on top, it's covered. It has almost like, well, first of all, it's shaped like a dove, hence why it's called the colomba. A colomba is a dove. Easter again, right? So it's shaped like a dove, and which is great because then you get more of those little crevices where all the sugar builds up on the outside and gets crunchy. And so it's easier. It's just, it's so good. And it's not as tall as a panettone. It's shorter. And then on top, it has, the traditional ones will have that sugar coating that's almost like a meringue crunch on the top, but just on the top, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then almonds, and the almonds have kind of gotten slightly toasted as they were in the oven.
Right.
And it's one of those things I try not to buy because if I have it, I can't just have a bite of it. Like all of a sudden you find yourself standing in your kitchen, shoving a hunk of it in your mouth. Because it's one of those breads that has that mouthfeel that you have to like chow down on it. You know what I mean?
You wake up from the coma, you look around and you're like, all that's left is an empty wrapper.
Diabetic
What
coma.
happened?
Exactly.
Where did all this go?
Yeah.
Is someone else living here that I don't know about?
And then I look down, I'm like, oh, no, it was me. I'm here by myself. And they make miniature ones too, just like the miniature panettone. So what I do is I'll let myself get 1 or 2 mini a season. Because if you have a mini in the house, that thing's out of here. I mean, and they'll do them with different. So the traditional is the way I described it, but just like panettone is starting to get reconcocted right now, they're filling it with pistachio cream and hazelnut cream and doing all these crazy things with it. The same thing's happening to the colomba.
Yeah.
But honestly, the colomba, leave that poor beautiful thing alone. It doesn't need any alterations. It's so good as is. It is so good.
Nice. And you
then
said
one last one.
Yeah, you said there was one more.
Yeah. The pastiera napolitana.
Okay.
And the pastiera napolitana, first of all, I've never tried to make it. I've never dared to try to make it. I don't know if it's really complicated because it's another one of those things that seems like it would be easy because it has this hard to describe consistency and flavor. But there is, well, first of all, you have to make it at least a few days before Easter and then not eat it until Easter because all the flavors have to set in.
Okay.
Which I'm pretty sure that's also the case with fruitcake. Not that anybody really likes fruitcake, so I don't want to give this a bad name. But like fruitcake, you don't make it and eat it the same day.
Right.
It has to sit around for a couple of days. So it has to sit around a couple of days so that all the flavors set in. Here we go again with rumors, right? Because a lot of the time recipes in Italy, you don't have an exact quantity. You don't have an exact origin, but there's always a rumor of where it started. And 9 times out of 10, desserts are rumored to have been invented by nuns.
Yes.
And that's because
Same
just
in
like the
Portugal.
booze, right? Yeah, the nuns were right. Oh yeah, the nuns, and then the monks were making the booze, right? So, so I mean, I don't, even if you're not a religious person, you got to be excited about the nuns and the monks because they were making dessert and booze.
Yeah.
So this one is it was of course a convent in Naples, and it says that the inspiration for the flavors in this cake were what would have been in season at the time, right?
Yes.
And so this has that essence of the orange trees, the blossoms and orange trees.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise, surprise, convents had that luxury because a lot of people don't realize that citrus was a luxury. It still is a luxury, but you would only have citrus in Italy if you had somewhere to keep it warm during frosty times.
Yeah.
So if you had a little tiny property, you didn't have citrus, right? So it was a status symbol. So wealthy, noble families had citrus, and then so did the convents. So a lot of the desserts come from convents because they had access. They had their own chickens, and they had access to the sugar and the flour and the things that they needed, and then citrus and things like that. So a lot of the desserts, is it the same in Portugal? I know there's a lot of egg in the, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll see, the rumor is anywhere you go in Portugal, it's always, well, they had these egg yolks because they used the whites to starch their collars. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I must have heard that story 100 times.
Right.
But all the little pastries that you get in Portugal, they're all made with these, not all of them, but they're made with egg yolks. And, they're rich and delicious and creamy. And tons and tons of almonds. That's the other thing that you'll always see in Portuguese pastries. Now, you will get some citrus in there because the citrus here is really, really good, especially like clementines and oranges and stuff like that. So you'll see that stuff as well. And then down south, you'll see a lot of figs and things like that. So, Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. No, I asked you, so because I'd heard rumor, but I don't really know. You're living there and you're tasting all the things and you're writing about it. And I read a lot of the stuff you send in your newsletter, but I haven't. You just lose track because you're doing a good job of making a lot of stuff. So I can't keep up with you. And here we are talking. So I thought I would ask. So basically, it's like a pie, and the original one had a handful of wheat is what they refer to it when they talk about this recipe. It mixed with ricotta cheese. Obviously, the wheat is cooked, right? With ricotta cheese, eggs, and then those different fragrances of the flowers, candied citrus, and maybe even citron or orange, and of course some spices, right? So there's kind of 2 recipes. That would be the original recipe, and then a more modern recipe. There's pastry cream mixed in with the ricotta, or even in lieu of the ricotta. That's kind of not as highly respected as the original recipe, but some people love it. Okay. I haven't had that one. I've just had the original recipe because I'm fortunate. Everyone should have a friend from Napoli, from Naples. Yes. I actually have a few. Fiorella, who you interviewed, is one of my favorite tour guides in the world.
Great
She's
lady.
so entertaining. Oh, and have you met her in person? She's so skinny. She's tiny, and my girl can eat. And I love it. I love it. Man, can she eat. And so that's all we do when we've worked together in the past. We would just talk about food. Anyway, she's one of my friends from Naples, but I have a friend in Florence from Naples, and his mom will send, either come to visit or will bring or send the pastiera that she makes. So in the past, when I've been lucky enough to be invited for Easter, that's probably the best pastiera I've ever had.
Of course.
And then even though it's not from Florence, a lot of restaurants will serve it because it's one of those things that everybody wants to eat at Easter time.
Yeah, yeah.
But none of them touched the one I had from Naples.
Yeah,
though.
Mom knows what she's doing. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's one more thing.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm keeping you on the phone forever.
It's great. It's so awesome. I'm just, when you say this, Toni, I'm just imagining the table. It's just heaving with all these great desserts, all this food, and then all of these desserts. So, what else you got for us?
There's a lot of variations on those savory pies, and some are going to be thinner and have kind of a puff pastry top on them, almost like oh my gosh, the Greek one, spanakopita. Oh, I love spanakopita. Kind of like that, but not folded or anything. And like some of them will have meats, like they'll have lamb meat or sheep meat that have been cooked with like onions and red wine. There's just the possibilities are endless, and that's why you just have to hang out with an Italian family whenever possible on a holiday, because you'll always discover something new. But the thing I was actually going to mention is not food, but even though I've talked about a lot of other places, you had asked me about Easter in Florence.
Yes.
And we cannot not mention this, or otherwise I'm not telling you like the number one thing you're supposed to do when you're in Florence at Easter time on Easter Sunday. Have you heard about the exploding cart?
No.
Okay. So
sounds entertaining though.
It is. It's really crazy. I've never gotten to see all of it up front because they have limited seating in the Duomo. Okay. So first of all, I want you to imagine the front door of the Duomo of our cathedral is open, and that door's got to be 2 stories high.
Yeah, massive.
And a procession begins all the way at Porta Prato. So we're talking like a good 15 to 20 minute walk if you're just walking by yourself. But we're talking about a large cart that is being carried from a different part of the city all the way, and then they park it in front of the Duomo. I shouldn't say park; they perch it in front of the Duomo, and this cart is probably two floors high. So it's not. It doesn't go into the Duomo. It's perched right outside of the Duomo, and there are fireworks coming off of it. There are all kinds of things happening. It's almost like a domino effect. Like somebody lights something, and then it just lights one thing, and that lights the next, and the next, and the next, and then, and this is the crazy part. And this is one of those moments where you say, only Italy, only in Italy, because they love their fireworks. Italians love the fireworks.
That's for
and
sure.
So we have I guess it's a cord, I'm assuming it's metal, that goes from this cart into the Duomo all the way to the pulpit, right, where the priest is. And there are locals in the Duomo sitting in the pews. And at some point, a dove, and I've heard it referred to as a dove missile. Okay.
What?
I believe it's made out of metal, maybe out of wood. I'm not really sure what it's made out of.
Okay. Not a real dove.
No, not a real dove. A replica of a dove, if you will, it is somehow propelled into the church, and then it comes back to the cart. So it makes a round trip. I don't even know how to describe it, and I hope I'm not saying it incorrectly. You know what I mean? Because I've seen videos I've never seen it in real person. Because to get into the Duomo, you got to know somebody.
Okay.
And you've got to be a morning person.
Right.
I know people, but I'm not a morning person. And I've seen it from far away where you stand outside because it's like around 10:30. You can still kind of just walk up and maybe get a decent spot outside, which being outside is not bad because then they have people throwing flags and people in dressed like ancient soldiers, and there's drums and horns playing. I mean, there's, whether you're inside or outside, there's something to see. But either way, you have to kind of camp out to get a view and to really see anything exciting. Otherwise, you're seeing it from like 3 blocks away.
Yeah, right.
And you can just see the smoke coming from the cart, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend
Seeing the exploding cart.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of
And the
videos
dove
of it
missile.
on YouTube. So I would say before planning your whole trip around Easter just to see this, watch the video on YouTube, and you're either going to say, gotta see that in person, or eh. I mean, you're not going to say eh, because I mean, when you see it, it's amazing. But you might not think that's the reason to come to Florence. But if you're in Florence for Easter, then you better go see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Love it. It just sounds, you know, I mean, it just sounds so Italy. You know, you've got these crazy traditions, and you've got amazing food. So I mean,
exactly.
what more do you want? You know?
See, you just summed it up in 3 sentences.
See, I can occasionally.
Crazy traditions and amazing food. That's Italy.
That'll be the title of your autobiography, Toni. You know, before I let you go, every time I have you on, you've been so kind with your time to come on the show several times, and every time I have you, you always have funny, entertaining stories about your dating life. And I hope I'm not prying too much asking you this, but you've always volunteered it, so I'm going to ask anyway. Anything you want to share from the personal life of Toni in Italy, trying to date?
So I have one that actually ties right in with Easter, but it's borderline scandalous. So I'll tell you a quick one first, and then I'll decide. The quick one that isn't scandalous is once upon a time, I met a guy, and he wanted to date me, and I did not want to date him. And he's, you know, those guys that are like, if I insist long enough, I'll break her down. You know, like everybody's grandparents' story is, I didn't really like him, but after 5 months, he wouldn't leave me alone, you know. So
I married him. What the hell?
So I married him, and now 55 years later, best thing I ever did, you know. So anyway, that guy, except for that I never married him or dated him. But he thought he was going to break me down. And so for the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, he kept insisting on paying for meals. And by the way, sidebar, I was like super skinny because at the time I didn't have any money and could only afford to eat chickpeas, didn't have a cheese budget. And I used to row like on a daily basis on the river. So I was looking good, kids. And I had quite the appetite. And so he was, I think at first he loved how much I could eat, kind of like me with Fiorella. I'm like, oh, I love anyone that can just enjoy it like that, you know? And then I think he started to realize this girl can really pack it in and I don't know where it's going. And so finally one day he says, and by the way, he's part American and part Italian. So finally, so he said this to me in English. He said, I don't know how to say this to you, but I'm going to have to ask you to start chipping in when we eat out because your feed bill is killing me.
I'm going to be broke here.
He was like, he's like, I'm not getting any return on my investment. And, and he's like, I could have bought you a diamond bracelet by now. So I think we'll stop there. I don't think I'm going to tell the other story.
That's fair enough. You think about it, Toni, and maybe we'll break it out of you next time.
Okay.
I'm gonna be like this guy, and I'm gonna keep breaking you down and keep asking you about it, and we'll see how long it takes.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. If you have me on enough episodes, you'll get that story out of me.
Yeah, finally. All right. Well, Toni
so much
from
fun.
Taste Florence, so great to catch up with you. So great to talk to you about Florence. And, folks should book a tour with you at tasteflorence.com. It's a great food tour. And
thank you.
Everybody loves when they go on the food tour. I mean, how could you not? It's Florence, and Toni has been there for 20 years. She knows everybody in every place. So,
thank you.
Thanks again for being on the show. I always get so many laughs talking to you, and it's also informative as well. So, thanks, Toni. You have a great day, and thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks for having me.
Okay, that's Toni from Taste Florence. Does she sound like she's living the life in Florence or what? Book your tour at tasteflorence.com. And if you want more from my interview with Toni, you can hear that on my Substack, where we talk about over-tourism in Florence and how to best avoid the crowds. Listen to that by becoming a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are in Dublin for a controversial dish called coddle and a whiskey tour. Don't miss that. Until then, get over to destinationeatdrink.com for more foodie travel fun. My new video is a food crawl in the French city of Lille. Yep, it's in France, but it's got a Belgian vibe. I visit a great indoor market, try a dish imported from Wales, and a very, very strong cheese. You can watch that video by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. And speaking of Belgium, I just posted a story about a unique little candy from Ghent, Belgium that may have been discovered in a pharmacist's lab. Read that by clicking on the blog tab at destinationeatdrink.com. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.